What would a medieval eunuch be? The medieval world, vast and varied, was filled with towering castles, noble courts, and shadowed intrigues. Beneath the grandeur and the pageantry, though, there existed a group of figures whose lives were dictated by forces beyond their control. Eunuchs, men who had been physically altered, often found themselves in positions of immense power. Yet their stories remained shrouded in mystery. What would their lives be like? How did they rise to prominence? And what was the cost of their unique status? This is the tale of the medieval eunuch, a story of resilience, sacrifice, and survival in a world that often demanded more than they could give.
The process of becoming a eunuch. The process of becoming a eunuch was a brutal and traumatic experience. Most boys who underwent this transformation did so at a very young age, before they reached puberty. The procedure, often performed in unsanitary conditions and without anesthesia, left the young boy forever altered. Castration, the removal of the testicles, was not only a physical mutilation but also a psychological one, stripping the boy of his manhood and, in many cases, his identity. In medieval times, eunuchs were valued for their perceived loyalty. Without the ability to reproduce or create heirs, they were seen as less of a threat to the throne or royal power. For rulers and emperors, eunuchs were the ideal servants, placed in trusted positions where their loyalties would lie solely with their masters, never with a family or children of their own.
But the cost was immense. The pain of the procedure was only the beginning. The psychological toll that castration took on the boy was something that would follow him throughout his life. Most eunuchs could not marry, have children, or lead the lives that were expected of men in medieval society. They were marked, both physically and emotionally, as different. Yet, despite these profound losses, many eunuchs went on to rise to positions of power. Some became trusted advisors, generals, and influential figures in royal courts and religious institutions. Their lack of family connections meant that their loyalties were often undivided, making them valuable to the powerful men and women who ruled. As you listen to this, it might be hard to imagine the immense sacrifice involved. But the story of these men doesn't end with their pain. It leads them into the halls of power, where they would play pivotal roles in shaping the course of history.
Stay with us as we dive deeper into the fascinating lives of eunuchs and explore how they navigated a world that saw them both as outsiders and powerful figures. In the next chapter, we uncover how these men, broken by the brutal procedure, would rise to prominence in royal courts and command the trust of emperors and kings. The lives of eunuchs in royal courts. Eunuchs were a prominent fixture in royal courts across the medieval world. Their presence was so common that their roles and duties became ingrained in the fabric of royal life. But what was life truly like for these men? How did they serve? And why were they trusted so implicitly by their masters? In the Byzantine Empire, eunuchs held positions of great power. They served not only as guards of the emperor's harem, but also as administrators, generals, and diplomats. One of the most famous eunuchs in history was Narses, a general under Emperor Justinian. Despite being a eunuch, Narses led Byzantine forces to victory in Italy, defeating the Ostrogoths and securing the empire's foothold in the region. His rise to power was extraordinary, and his influence in the Byzantine court was unparalleled. But Narses was not alone. Eunuchs in royal courts were often given significant responsibilities, such as overseeing the treasury or managing the emperor's estates. Their lack of family ties made them perfect candidates for these positions, as they were perceived as loyal and neutral. Without heirs to secure their own legacy, eunuchs were less likely to make power plays or betray their masters for personal gain. Eunuchs were also the gatekeepers of the royal harem, trusted with the safety and security of the emperor's women. In many ways, they were more than just servants. They were essential to the workings of the court. The emperor relied on them for loyalty, and the women of the harem often trusted them implicitly with their well-being. However, as trusted as they were, eunuchs still faced a great deal of suspicion and prejudice. Their physical difference marked them as other, and many were treated as outsiders, despite their power and influence. This duality, being both indispensable and marginalized, was a recurring theme in the lives of eunuchs. What was it like to rise to such heights despite the harshness of their beginnings? Their journey to power was filled with challenges, both internal and external. But in many cases, they triumphed over these obstacles, carving out a place for themselves in the complex, often dangerous, world of medieval courts. In the next chapter, we delve into the religious roles of eunuchs, how they served not only in the courts of kings, but also in the sacred halls of churches and mosques. Stay tuned as we explore their unique and often overlooked impact on religious life during the medieval period. Eunuchs in religious institutions. Eunuchs weren't just a fixture in royal courts. They were also present in religious institutions, playing crucial roles in both the Christian and Islamic worlds. Their position within these institutions was often linked to their perceived purity, as they had renounced their earthly desires through their physical transformation. In the Byzantine Empire, eunuchs rose to high religious positions, including bishops and patriarchs. Their lack of family ties and the belief that their castration had brought them closer to God made them ideal candidates for these roles. They were seen as pure, devoted men who could serve the church without distractions or worldly desires. One notable figure was Alexios of Constantinople, who became a powerful religious leader despite his status as a eunuch. His rise to power within the church mirrored the broader trend of eunuchs becoming influential figures in religious institutions. They were trusted to manage religious affairs, oversee church property, and mediate between the secular and spiritual worlds. In the Islamic world, eunuchs were also prominent in religious life, particularly in the Abbasid Caliphate. They often served as guards of the caliph's harem but were also entrusted with important administrative and religious duties. Their neutrality, as men without family interests, made them ideal candidates for positions of trust within the religious hierarchy. But being a eunuch in religious life was not without its challenges. While they were seen as spiritually pure, they were also often treated as outsiders by the broader society. The very transformation that made them valuable in the eyes of their religious superiors also kept them on the periphery of mainstream society. In the next chapter, we will explore the deep psychological and social impact of being a eunuch. What did it mean to live a life so radically different from that of others? Stay tuned as we uncover the inner turmoil and complexities of the eunuch's experience in medieval society. Psychological and social impact. The life of a eunuch, as we have seen, was one marked by both power and alienation. But what was the psychological toll of such a life? How did eunuchs cope with the trauma of castration, the isolation they often felt, and the deep emotional scars they carried throughout their lives? For many eunuchs, the emotional impact of their physical transformation was profound. They were marked as different, excluded from the traditional roles that men played in society. The inability to marry, have children, or form a family left a deep void in their lives. Many struggled with depression and loneliness, unable to fully reconcile their altered bodies with the expectations placed upon them by society. Despite their significant roles in royal courts and religious institutions, eunuchs were still often treated with suspicion and fear. Their physical difference made them the subject of gossip, intrigue, and sometimes even reverence. They were both feared and admired, seen as mysterious figures who were simultaneously indispensable and otherworldly. In many cases, eunuchs coped with these feelings of isolation by focusing on their work. They threw themselves into their duties as advisors, administrators, or spiritual leaders. Their loyalty to their masters and to their own sense of purpose gave them a sense of fulfillment, even if they were unable to find the personal connections they longed for. Would you like to continue to the next part of the story? Stay tuned, because in the next chapter we'll travel beyond Europe and the Middle East to explore the role of eunuchs in Asia, where they carved out unique and influential roles in both politics and religion. The brutality of becoming a eunuch. To understand the lives of eunuchs, one must first grasp the brutality of the act that defined them. Castration was not just a medical procedure. It was an irreversible fate that erased one's connection to his biological roots, relegating him to a status between life and death. Historically, the act of castration served both political and social purposes. Whether it was a ruler seeking to safeguard his power, or a religious institution aiming to control the body in its entirety, the eunuchs became, in a sense, instruments of control. Most eunuchs were castrated as boys, often in their pre-adolescent years. This ensured that they would not develop the physical characteristics of adult men, such as body hair or a deep voice, which would mark them as fully grown. The procedure, executed without anesthesia and performed under the most basic of conditions, left most boys physically scarred and emotionally shattered. Though some survived the ordeal, many did not, succumbing to infections or shock. Those who did live through it were forever changed, both physically and psychologically. They were no longer boys, and they were not men either. They existed in a liminal space, where they could neither fully belong to the world of men, nor to the world of women. In the Byzantine Empire, castration was a state-sanctioned practice, often performed in public to instill fear in the populace. Yet, in a twisted irony, it was also a rite of passage for many boys, offering them a path to power. In a world where status was often determined by birthright, eunuchs represented a different kind of ascension, one that was not based on noble lineage or military prowess, but on their willingness to surrender their most basic human rights. Eunuchs and power. The rise of Narcissus. While many eunuchs spent their lives in relative obscurity, serving as servants, administrators, or guards in royal courts and religious institutions, others rose to great prominence. One of the most famous examples of a eunuch's rise to power is Narcissus, a Byzantine general who played a pivotal role in Emperor Justinian's campaigns to reclaim lost territories in the West. Narcissus was castrated as a young boy and sent to Constantinople, where he quickly climbed the ranks within the Byzantine court. Despite his status as a eunuch, he became one of the most trusted advisors to Emperor Justinian. His brilliance as a strategist and his ability to maneuver politically allowed him to rise through the ranks of the military, eventually earning him the position of general. In the 6th century, when Justinian sought to reconquer the Western Roman Empire from the Ostrogoths, Narcissus was sent to Italy to command the Byzantine forces. Despite being in his 70s by this time, Narcissus proved to be an astute and resourceful military leader. He orchestrated the defeat of the Ostrogoths at the Battle of Tegine in 552 AD, securing Byzantine control over Italy. His victory solidified his status as one of the most powerful figures in the empire. Narcissus' story is one of triumph and resilience. Born a eunuch, he faced the same societal prejudices and limitations as other eunuchs of his time. Yet, through his intelligence, loyalty, and ability to navigate the intricate world of Byzantine politics, Narcissus carved out a place for himself at the heart of the empire's military and political machinery. Narcissus' rise to power highlights the contradictions that define the lives of eunuchs. They were often perceived as subservient, their bodies altered for the express purpose of removing them from the traditional power structures of family and inheritance. Yet, despite this, many eunuchs, like Narcissus, managed to gain political and military influence. Their unique status allowed them to bypass the traditional barriers to power that prevented others from rising, making eunuchs formidable figures in the courts of kings and emperors. The role of eunuchs in the royal harem. In addition to their roles in politics and military affairs, eunuchs were also entrusted with guarding the royal harem, one of the most vital and sensitive parts of the royal court. The harem, a private space reserved for the king's women, was highly guarded, both physically and politically. Eunuchs, due to their physical alteration, were considered the ideal candidates for this role. They were trusted not to engage in sexual relations with the women they guarded, making them the perfect protectors of royal virtue. The harem was not just a space for leisure, it was a crucial political institution where royal alliances were made through marriage and where the next generation of rulers was often conceived. Eunuchs played an instrumental role in managing the harem, ensuring that the women were kept safe, the royal heirs were protected, and political alliances were maintained. In the Byzantine Empire, eunuchs were often placed in charge of the imperial harem. They controlled access to the emperor's wives, concubines, and female relatives. This placed them in a position of immense power, as the emperor's personal life was of great political significance. A eunuch's influence within the harem could shape the future of the empire, as many royal heirs were born from the women in these secluded spaces. While eunuchs in the royal harem often held significant power, they were still subjected to the social and cultural prejudices of their time. They were viewed as different, neither fully male nor female, and as a result, they were both admired and feared. Though they were trusted with intimate and political matters, they were also marginalized and isolated from the larger society. The spiritual life of eunuchs, religion and devotion. In both the Christian and Islamic worlds, eunuchs were also given important roles within religious institutions. Their status as men without family ties or personal desires made them appealing figures for religious life. They were seen as capable of dedicating themselves fully to the service of God, free from the distractions of marriage or the pressures of producing heirs. In the Byzantine Church, eunuchs were often appointed to high religious offices. They served as bishops, patriarchs, and even advisors to the emperor. Their unique position as celibates, who had renounced earthly pleasures, made them ideal candidates for these roles. Some eunuchs even rose to prominence as religious reformers, helping to shape the policies of the church and the empire. In the Islamic world, eunuchs were also highly valued in religious institutions. They were often entrusted with the care of the caliph's harem, or assigned to religious duties within the court. Eunuchs were sometimes appointed to positions of great power within the Islamic bureaucracy, overseeing important matters of state and religion. Like their Christian counterparts, eunuchs in the Islamic world were seen as men of purity and devotion, free from the distractions of family life. While their roles in religious institutions provided them with some semblance of fulfillment and purpose, eunuchs still faced a deep sense of alienation. Though they were revered in some respects, they were also seen as outsiders, unable to fully integrate into society. Their lives, though marked by power and influence, were still defined by the profound loss they had experienced. The psychological and social impact. The emotional and psychological impact of being a eunuch was far-reaching. Many eunuchs struggled with feelings of emasculation, alienation, and loneliness. Their status as men without families meant they were often excluded from the basic human experiences that defined much of medieval society: marriage, children, and the formation of a personal legacy. Despite these challenges, eunuchs often found ways to adapt. Many channeled their energies into their work, rising to influential positions in the royal court, military, and religious institutions. Others sought solace in their religious faith, viewing their condition as a form of divine sacrifice. Some eunuchs found comfort in forming surrogate families within the royal courts, bonding with the women and men they served. However, these surrogate relationships could never fully replace the families they had been denied. The sense of alienation and the struggle for identity were consistent themes in the lives of eunuchs. They lived in a world that saw them as both powerful and powerless, revered yet marginalized. Despite this, many eunuchs managed to carve out fulfilling and influential lives, leaving a lasting impact on the societies they served.